Welcome to Women of Culture. I'm Meera T. Sundararajan. Join me and my distinguished guests to discover untold stories from the world of culture. Ella, hello, can you hear me?
Hello, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about this extremely interesting topic, which is very topical as well, artificial intelligence. We seem to be reading about it, seeing it everywhere at the moment. And I was sure that you would have a unique perspective on the various things that are happening. So I couldn't resist pulling you into a podcast interview.
I'm honored.
Having said all that, I was going to say, can I ask you, first of all, just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work?
Sure. Although it's quite hard, but my name is Ela Orleans, and I am audiovisual composer, video artist, music performer, musician, songwriter. I am currently based in Paris, and I recently completed practice-based research at the Department of Music and Sonic Arts at the University of Glasgow, and I was awarded a PhD in 2023. And more importantly, I am Polish, and I grew up during the 70s and 80s communist Poland, and I have background in fine arts, theater, film, radio, music, and other things which are probably less important for this interview.
But I'm sure very interesting. I mean, I always ask my guests to introduce themselves, but in your case, I had to sort of throw up my hands in despair when I thought of introducing you, because you are such a multi-talented person and working in so many artistic disciplines, and I should say across so many artistic disciplines.
Is multi-talented a synonym for crazy?
I'll leave you to answer that question.
Or undecisive, probably.
I think I'll just say that the line between creativity and madness or indecisiveness perhaps is a very porous line. But yes. I was going to say, if you can tell us a little bit more about your process of artistic creation, maybe even just in relation to a recent or current project, I think that would help me to situate our conversation a little bit even better in the context of the kinds of work that is top of mind for you at the moment.
Sure. Well, I have been focusing mainly on alternative narrative forms, which are kind of weaving audiovisual archives, found footage, and sound. I work a lot with samples, and my style relies on concepts, I can say, exploring various issues such as appropriation, copyright, ethics, art histories, audiovisual methodology, of course, too, but then there is a concept of authorship that plays a big role here, personal biography, and I would say I'm engaged with questions of cultural memory and meaning. I thought about this today, and I think that's probably the most important for me. And mainly, to simplify it, I just really use technique of collage. I think something everybody can place the technique quite easily. I cut and paste things, and I like and anything I like, and I repeat those fragments, and I use them as metronome in music, for example. In visual creative process, it's a little bit different, but when it comes to music, it is a metronome on the top of which I build my own tunes or narratives which pop into my mind. And it's a form of expression of my taste rather than cultural identity, because I'm always a bit wary of that, as you know, not every person who is Polish and does collage does things I do. So so these are just my personal. This is just this is just expression of my personal sensitivity and style.
Absolutely. I mean, just even listening to you give that brief overview of some of the things that interest you, I see you being present on so many frontiers that are key right now to the discussions, I think, that are happening around artificial intelligence. Your work seems to intersect with, of course, with copyright issues and appropriation. You mentioned that, but also deeper questions, I think, surrounding authorship and the whole idea of original creation, authenticity. These seem to be questions that you engage with quite a bit, just even in the course of your creative process.
I just thought that maybe we forgot to mention that you were my advisor and first supervisor as well, which really inspired my thinking about it, because I was doing a lot of those things without thinking, and PhD actually helped me to put in words. Maybe I was worried that it will just the form will be greater than the actual value of it, but it was very, very valuable process for me to name things and find out why I'm doing what I'm doing as well. And
absolutely, and I'm so glad you mentioned that. Although I'm very humbled by you crediting me for anything. I did have the pleasure of getting involved with your work at Glasgow, and I'm very glad that I did. But I think the credit really goes to you. To have the curiosity to try to do exactly what you just described. Confront these processes in a more direct way and try to put into words your reflections and your frameworks and ideas surrounding how you're going to deal with them in practice. I think it's very rare, actually, that you come across an artist like yourself who is willing to step across the threshold and also become a scholar. I think you became a scholar of your own artistic practice, as well as the various related fields and ideas that you looked at in your PhD. And I think it's a remarkable achievement. So I'm glad you brought up that particular point, and it gives us another layer to appreciate the richness of the background that you're bringing to all of these discussions.
Thank you very much. You are always very generous. I think the reasons behind that were a little bit more selfish. I just really wanted to find a smart way to excuse myself, and then I realized that research will allow me to do a lot of things I wouldn't be able to do without that cover. I was just like undercover agent almost. I was allowed to go into houses without permission, and steal. Pretty much in the name of the research.
We're awaiting confirmation of separation. That was secondary propellant on Quad Bravo. Roger, we copy.
Yes, so we were talking about your PhD, and I was just going to say that knowledge is power, right?
Yes.
So I think you are very empowered. But to then maybe turn a little bit towards AI, because I'm just really burning with curiosity to hear some of the things that you might have to say, because what we've seen over the past several months, I think, is something, people always say that things are unprecedented, but I think we really are in a situation now that is unprecedented in many ways. And we've seen artificial intelligence just emerging as such a visible presence in the arts. And notably in the news, we've seen the image generators, for example, coming up, and also text generating technologies like ChatGPT and so on. And, just for anyone who hasn't been following this, these are technologies that are trained on large amounts of data, much of it acquired via the internet, without any particular explicit permissions being sought from anyone. And that data includes images and text that is, quote unquote, available. And I'm not going to go into the copyright implications of that right now, but I'm sure we will get there eventually in our discussion today. But for the moment, I guess I would like to hear your perspective as an artist working on the frontiers of so many interesting areas, as we were just discussing. But I'm just curious, does this interest you? Does what's happening interest you? And what do you think of these particular technologies that have become available?
Well, as an artist, I'm interested in any technology. I mean, what I do is mainly digital. So for me, technology allowed me to create what I do without, for example, interference of a man. So I don't have to rely on the studios run by men, because digital technology allowed me to do everything on my own.
Interesting.
And digital technology allowed me to learn at my own pace without paying huge amounts of money to learn things which I can learn in my home. So of course, as an artist, I am interested in any technology available to me, and as a struggling artist, I will look into options which give me results fast and at low cost. Also, because those who offer jobs to me now, as my profile grows, it doesn't grow to the point that my name is a label, or my name tells anybody, the wide public, something. So I am very often asked to, for example, copy somebody's style. So, for example, some of the directors who are very much sure they are very original expect me to sound, for example, like Brian Eno. So for me, in order to not lose completely my soul, I am just using AI to satisfy them. And I am who fights with the sword dies from the sword. So I am doing that because I don't want to waste time to sound like Brian Eno, because I'm Ela Orleans. But I do have to pay my bills, and this is not something I particularly like to do, but I rather do it fast and at low cost than, for example, pay for a big orchestra and arranger and everything to do something which is a very, I would say, demeaning request. But that's how a lot of directors work. Very often I get, for example, which I find the problem. I mean, this is not a problem I'm talking about. I'm just a bit turning into different direction. But I feel that the problem everybody has with AI started there, that creativity is not a value anymore.
Absolutely.
It is
100%
value for
agree.
some, but for those who are brave. But for the rest, we like to hear the songs we've heard before. And we like to hear the stories we've heard before. And we like to hear the versions. And we are so bored that and impatient that we are not able to concentrate on something which requires any kind of exercise. So for me, ChatGPT, for example, is amazing for writing those horrendous, in my opinion, application forms for art funding, for example.
For grants, I was about to say.
Because if I have to spend 4 months, and this is how much it takes to write for certain to application forms for certain applications. I've been talking to my friends from different countries. I won't mention the organization. I think you probably know it as well, but it doesn't matter. I think it's a very common problem that artists spend too much time just applying for those things, where these organizations should be there to find them. They should do their research. They shouldn't have an application they like or not. And artists should just spend 4 months of their creative life just to write stupid, really. I'm sorry to say it, but it's just, it goes into quite ridiculous route. Where artists has to just lie and come up with ideas which will just please the organization, the grant giver. So yeah, those to me, those ChatGPT and Midjourney I don't use, but I use Iva, which is a musical application. I use them whenever my brain is in danger to think about things which are not worth thinking.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're just making some points here that are so important. First of all, I've never heard anyone refer to AI as a tool of subversion that artists could use, because to me, that's what you're saying. And I think it makes perfect sense. You know, you're talking about this as a tool that can help you as a creative person to subvert a system, including relationships that are not really set up for creativity.
Yeah.
I mean, even the example that you're giving of working with directors, you know, immediately that made me think of the strikes that happened in Hollywood, and in fact, some of which are ongoing regarding the contracts between artists and producers, between actors and producers, writers and producers in the AI environment, and about what they should and shouldn't be asked to do, you know, in this particular technological context. And a lot of fears there about being replaced by the technology and so on. Fears that are well-founded, I think. And to me, the comments that you're making about the expectations coming from the production side, they sound like a lot of the concerns that came up in the context of those conflicts. You know, and you're not really being asked to be an artist in a way, because your creativity, your originality are not being sought out. Instead, you're being asked to produce something on prescription, you know, according to the taste and judgment of the people in charge, the people with the resources. And my only question to you in that regard is, you know, because you mentioned about our habits and our desires as the public, you know, and I can sense a tension there, because on the one hand, you said, well, we all want to hear the things that we're used to hearing, but on the other hand, we're bored. And so I wonder if the public is being fed these products by as a series of institutions or, you know, frameworks that have decided, okay, this is what sells, this is what people want. I'm not really sure that it is what the public wants. You know, I still believe that there is at least a segment, and maybe a large segment of the public, that wants things that are authentic, that are truly creative, that are different, and that wants to experience something new. But our tastes are being dulled, and you know, any hopes or expectations we might have in that regard are perpetually being frustrated, because the people who sell want to be able to sell to a formula. So I just think that the problems you're talking about are so fundamental, and they go back to what you said at the beginning, which is, you know, what is the role of creativity in our society? Is this something we respect? Is it something we still desire, or have we just given up on it?
Or are we talking about creativity, or are we talking about compensation and productivity? because that's my pet. My pet peeve. Sorry, my being Polish French now, learning French and English is I'm mixing everything. My pet peeve is productivity right now, and it is so mixed up as misconstrued as a creativity. It really makes me insanely mad. I absolutely hate. I actually follow a lot of productivity gurus because I do have problems with organizing myself and with organizing my time. And I would like to be this person who wakes up in the morning and drinks coffee very quickly, exercises, and then does things. But creative process is just not what everybody seems to talk about. Everybody talks about money and productivity and compensation, which is a result of productivity. And this has nothing to do with creativity. And am I threatened? Is my creativity threatened? No. By AI? Definitely no. Poverty threatens my creativity. But the robots, no, because when I was a child, I wasn't afraid of the world around me. I wasn't aware of communism or poverty of my parents or demoralization of the society. I was creative.
Of course.
I had nothing. I was creative, and I think we are creative creatures. But you mentioned something really interesting about the amount of things about the amount of work which has been produced. I'm not sure if I understood it right, but it came to my mind when I was listening to you that of course we have lots of products such as lots of toothpaste now, lots of shampoos, lots of this, lots of that, but we also have a lot of artists, lots of them, and I feel too many. I think everybody, because I think people think, and I think AI gives that idea to some, that art is just a matter of decision. It isn't a matter of decision. It's a matter of talent. And there is too many people in art schools and music schools, and there will be very little number of those people who will be actually successful, and even lesser number, if any, which will remain the history of art or music. Or so it being an artist kind of became as common as being an accountant. I think I have much more friends who are in some way artists than accountants or doctors, and I think that is ridiculous as well. And in the way, I'm glad that AI comes here to kind of punish us for this silliness.
Yeah. I definitely think it is an end process of a way of thinking about the arts and creativity and culture and so on. You know, it's a point at which we've arrived after a long period of time. And I'm not even convinced that there's any necessity for AI to have gone this particular way, because I'm sure that there must be hundreds or thousands or maybe countless applications of AI that don't occur in this kind of context at all. I mean, you know, what about medical AI or AI in the use of transportation technologies? Or, I mean, there must be so many areas where the capabilities of AI are truly useful.
Absolutely.
You know, that it's particularly medical applications always comes to mind, just being able to compare, you know, huge amounts of data across populations and be able to assist with things like diagnosing diseases more accurately or sooner, and just things that could be so helpful. And why is it that so much of the public-facing aspect of AI is happening in this particular context instead? And, you know, why do we have to make these claims, which I think are incredibly hubristic? saying that machines can be creative and they can replace human creativity, which just as you're pointing out.
And I don't believe they can be creative. They can be productive. They can be reproducing things, but they cannot be creative. I mean, somebody said this, that if you take thousands of photos, there will be one which will be great. Does it make you amazing photographer? No, because
just
art
as you're
is
pointing out,
deliberate action, and AI is just its algorithm, which is amazing and it can look fantastic, but it's not art.
Yeah, absolutely. And why do we have to say that it is?
Yeah,
I think is the question I find myself asking so often, because again, here is a technology with amazing capabilities, with more applications than one can think of, to really make the world better for humanity, among other things, to make the world a better place. Ella, for me, I have always been, like yourself, I think, a person interested in technology and a believer in the potential of technology. And in fact, I come from a long line of people like that.
Yeah.
So it's been very uncomfortable for me to suddenly be in a situation where I don't feel enthusiastic. And I think you have actually put your finger on many of the reasons why that's the case. Because for me, technology is an instrument of human creativity. And creativity, by definition, is an integral part of who we are as human beings. And not in the sense that everyone is an artist, to go back to your point about that, which I think is so important. Maybe everyone isn't an artist, but that's perfectly fine. I do think everyone is creative.
Yes.
In whatever context in which they exercise their creativity.
I agree, absolutely.
Yeah, and I can think of immensely creative people in every field of life. And in fact, I think many of those who are really successful in the sense that they do meaningful work and they're inspiring to other people are profoundly creative people, because that's part of what makes us human. It's an essential part of what makes us human. And so is art, by the way.
Yes.
Art also is an essential, isn't it? Because, I'm talking to you today. You're someone who, among other things, works in the visual arts. Well, if you trace your ancestry as an artist back, you will trace it all the way back to the cave paintings in Lascaux.
Yes, absolutely. But also, I don't believe that originality is based on something innovative. Another pet peeve of mine is innovation in art, especially.
I want to hear this.
Because
please go ahead.
Because everybody is so crazy about innovation. And we are getting a lot of very boring art. And trust me, I went to a lot of exhibitions which are supposed to be innovative and showcasing the innovative talent. And I wasn't as bored in the long time. And I then had 2 exhibitions, for example, in Paris. I probably shouldn't name them, because I don't want any kind of repercussions here. But it was quite interesting, because there were 2 rather large art centers, museums, galleries, you name it, and both of them were showing. I went to see one exhibition by this artist who is my age, 52. Doing certain things in the museum, quite, I thought, done before, and I wasn't really interested. There was a lot of philosophical, made up PR behind it, and I just didn't like it. And the museum was empty. The busiest part of the place was the cafeteria, and when I see that, I'm already worried. And then I said to my friend that I have to go and see this XY artist, because I saw her a long time ago in New York when she was starting, and I thought that if she's an artist, I'm not believing in art anymore. And then I left the museum, and I see this huge line across the street, and And the line was to the exhibition of that person I was just talking about. And that person is slightly younger than me, maybe 48 or something like that. And is very popular, not because what she does is fashionable, but because she's extremely talented and great in what she's doing. And she's just extremely talented. It's just the talent what wins. And unfortunately, a lot of art right now is just is trying to tick those boxes which will get us grants. And rarely it is a just spontaneous creativity which makes things which are just heart-rendering, heartbreaking, and life-affirming. And I think that is a problem which is killed by humans, not by robots.
Yeah.
And if robots come to reclaim the place, fine. I think we deserved it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We screwed it up. We really, really destroyed this place. We destroyed it from many, many points, from many perspectives, from environmental perspective, from creative perspective as well. We complicated things and we made it so difficult to even like things and laugh at things and enjoy them. And it's becoming more and more, the art world is becoming more and more of the place where we are growing this line between eyebrows from thinking, what am I just seeing? I'm not sure. But then you go, for example, I can say this. I went to Museum of Pablo Picasso and I saw Sophie Calle retrospective, and it was just incredibly beautiful and crazy. And I went to see it 4 times. So art is not dead. There is no such a thing that creativity is dead or taken over by robots. There are amazing, wonderful artists who are creating nowadays, and they are not going anywhere. And no, but they are not threatened by AI because they're great. I was just playing once with ChatGPT and GPT, and I asked ChatGPT to write the letter in the style of Charles Dickens.
Oh,
and it was hilarious. I just copied and pasted my letter, and it made a letter in the. It was very, very funny, but would that make anybody think, oh, I'm not going to read Charles Dickens? Probably not, because it's wonderful, because nobody's going to ever give up on that. I mean, people who read books, because that's another problem we can talk about. But
yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking, so a couple of things stood out to me. One is that you have spoken several times now about talent, genuine artistic talent. And that's so striking to me because I think it's extremely unfashionable to talk about talent.
Oh, yes.
And certainly in one of the other circles in which I moved, the circle of the legal community and legal scholarship and so on, as you know very well from your engagement with copyright and so on, the whole question of creativity is actually very important for copyright law, although many copyright lawyers might dispute that. But there is an undercurrent, and we try to corral that issue into the issue of originality, the standard of originality under copyright law, and we just kind of take the legal framework in a different direction. But I think even more to your point, over time, as scholarship has delved into the issues surrounding copyright, there has been a real rejection of the idea of artistic talent and the need to recognize artistic talent, leave alone the idea that we should have structures in place to protect it. I don't think we're there. We're at the point where, people are writing about the non-existence of talent and of genius, and just sort of trying to put forward other theories, that, well, all these people are doing is being a focal point for interesting ideas that are out there, and they happen to gather them together, and such a thing as genius doesn't exist. And I think this is really the subtext, sometimes stated explicitly, by the way, but it's the subtext of a lot of research and scholarship that is going on in this area. Just to say that's a certain world, but on the other hand, I do think it reflects a broader social tendency, which is that we're very uncomfortable as a society talking about talent, let alone genius. I live in the Bay Area now, Ella, and so here everyone is a tech visionary. Everyone's a genius. I'm I think one of few people who actually had a genius in my family. The Indian national poet C. Subramanian Bharati, who was a poetic genius. And to me, that's something very different from the genius and the visionary that I hear people talking about here. And I simply can't equate the two. My mind just balks at that exercise. So I think it's really important that you're actually saying something about this very unfashionable topic, which isn't going to go away just because we stop talking about it.
No, of course, but I always tell my students to read obituaries whenever they have doubts that the genius is dead, because yes, the genius is dying, but that means it's still alive.
Yeah, our inability to recognize the genius while it lives amongst us. I mean, that's a whole other podcast topic, and I can see that I'm going to have to invite you back.
Yes, I mean, whenever I think somebody when somebody died, I'm thinking I always have this dramatic kind of thought, oh God, this is the end. This person died. There's nobody left. And then somebody else dies. And then it's just, oh my God, how many are there alive still? I mean, I'm 52, so there's probably a few, hopefully. But every time is this, we love thinking that this is the end. But I think when it comes to history, we've always been quite fatalistic about, art world and the death of genius and the death of talent. And we've been always very skeptical and criticizing. And from avant-garde movements, from 20th centuries avant-garde, it often sought to break with established artistic traditions and explore new forms of expression. Some artists and critics associated it with these movements. They were declaring them as the end of the world, as the end of the art world, which of course didn't happen. The same happened with postmodernism. That was the end. I mean, I remember my teachers in school just rolling their eyes whenever somebody was reading anything postmodern. And contemporary art debates about the state of art are so diverse, and some critics will express concerns about the commercialization of art, the influence of the market. I mean, I am one of those. But at the same time, I do see, I mean, living in Paris, I think helps too. Yes. I see so much coming. I hear, and I just don't have time to see it all. But also we have to realize that genius, as we like it, as much as we want it to exist and be amongst us, is a human being, and very often very the genius is not always a virtuoso in the sense it's just full of virtue. These are people who are flawed
human beings, in other words.
Yes, we have the case of Gérard Depardieu, for example. Here, is he genius? Yes. Is he terrible man? Yes. What's going to happen? Are we going to burn his movies? Hopefully not. But some people maybe would love them to be banned completely. It's the same with Polanski. The same with a lot of. I mean, when we are looking into, I think there is a crisis of genius being a bad person, and I think the problem I think with art, and the reason why it's so easily taken by AI as well, is that art lost its magic and its secrecy. It just became a public knowledge that the life of artists, the life of we know more sometimes about the writer's philosophy than about the books or the acting or the theater work, and we judge the art on the base of what kind of human they are. And I think, as much as I agree that this is probably right in some way, I think it ultimately does destroy the mystery of the art. It just, and I think when it comes to art, unlike as it is with technology or medicine, it does need to be mystical. It does need to be mysterious. And if it isn't, then if we just see actors or writers or artists in general in courts, etc., fighting to not to go to jail or to stay in jail, whatever, it's really difficult and it's very confusing for people, I think. And I think we were not prepared for that. It's kind of, I see the link between those old movements and now AI really expanding in this world, because I feel that there is not the fear, but there is something missing now. I think we all became kind of disillusioned and also lost. The art lost its innocence. I mean, it never had it. From Baudelaire to, whenever we think about any famous writer or poet or whoever, they were not usually nice people. But Dickens, aforementioned, terrible anti-Semite. But I don't know what to do sometimes, and I feel that maybe AI is trying to reclaim this from all those terrible artists. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking now. It's kind of a gibberish what I'm doing right now, but I allow myself to do that because I do wonder why everything happens in the same time. What I think it requires more somebody. I think it would, this conversation would maybe requires more the study of society right now as well, because I don't feel there is enough written about what is going on in people's minds right now, with considering the social media, the availability of information, etc., etc. I think it is very confusing. It is very overwhelming, and almost AI is almost like a natural way of almost closing or being almost some sort of end of an era, some sort of era.
Yeah.
Maybe. But until somebody really writes about it and gets all the information together wisely and with a lot of ground, unless we will feel there is a ground under our feet, I think we'll be able to talk about it and think, for example, what's going to be, how the future is going to look like, and where are we going with it? And is it a real threat, or is it something just we worry about because we like to worry about things?